She won't realize it during the arguments, not when the last message goes unanswered, and not even when you finally stop checking in. That's not the moment. The moment she realizes she needs you back comes later, in silence, when the world isn't looking and her pride isn't loud enough to protect her from herself anymore. It's in the middle of a Tuesday. No warning, no dramatic build-up, just a random pause between her busy day and a memory she didn't invite. She opens an old app, sees an old photo, or hears a song that suddenly sounds like you, and it hits her. Not just the memory of you, but the feeling of being around you, the calm, that presence, that strange safety she always took for granted. And that's when it starts. At first it's subtle, just a pull, a quick mental flash, but the mind doesn't let go that easily. What she once dismissed now feels irreplaceable. She'll remember how she felt when she was with you. Not the excitement of newness, but the weight of being understood without having to explain herself. She'll remember how you didn't flinch when she was cold, how you held space when she was uncertain, how you never tried to fix her, but just stood there, solid and unmoved. It won't be the lack of conversation that hurts her most. It'll be the lack of connection. She's had conversations since you DM, laughs, maybe even dates, but none of them saw her the way you did. None of them listened without a motive. None of them held that calm edge between strength and softness that made her feel safe without being in control. Because here's the truth she never wanted to admit. She pushed away something real, not because it was wrong, but because it was confronting. You didn't give her chaos. You gave her clarity, and clarity is terrifying when someone's not ready to face themselves. But now she's feeling the void, not because you've said a word, but because your silence is clean. It's not cold, it's not bitter, and it's not trying to be mysterious. It just is. And that's what twists inside her the most. You're not playing the game anymore. You're living, you're growing, you're becoming the version of yourself that doesn't need to be wanted to feel valuable. And in a moment she didn't see coming, she finally feels it. Not the pain of losing a person, but the pain of losing someone who never tried to hurt her and still walked away anyway. That's the moment she realizes she needs you back, not because of ego, not because of loneliness, but because for the first time she sees your absence for what it really is. Proof that you were never the problem. Now, here's where it starts to shift. Not just her thoughts, but her body language, her energy, her entire mood. She starts becoming restless. You see, when you were in her life, you created something she didn't fully recognize until it was gone. Emotional gravity. You grounded her. You were the stillness in her chaos, the quiet in her noise, the anchor when her emotions spun in circles. But now that you're not there, everything feels lighter, not in a good way. It feels empty. She's still doing her daily routines, she's still laughing with friends, she's still replying to people in her inbox, but inside she's checking in with a version of herself that doesn't feel as secure anymore, because something is missing. And she knows exactly what it is. But her pride, oh, it's still alive. It whispers, don't text him, don't look desperate, he'll come back first. So instead she watches quietly. She becomes an observer of your life from a distance. She sees that you're not breaking. She sees that you're not chasing. She sees that you're doing the one thing she didn't expect. You're healing. And that does something dangerous to her ego, because when a person starts healing in silence, it exposes everything she was trying to hide. The attention she once controlled is gone. The emotional leash she assumed would keep you circling back is snapped. The role she played in your life is rewritten by your actions, not your words. And here's the brutal truth she has to face now. She underestimated your silence. She thought if she ignored you long enough, if she pulled back, if she stayed silent, you'd fold, you'd chase, you'd beg for clarity. But you didn't. You respected the distance, you honored her choice, you gave her exactly what she asked for, space. And in that space, she expected freedom, but she got a mirror instead. Because in that silence, she doesn't see you falling apart. She sees you becoming better, sharper, calmer, more focused, more grounded. The person she always said she wanted. And now that person is becoming that man without her. That realization doesn't just sting. It lingers, it unsettles her, and it makes her start asking herself the questions she tried to avoid when she left. What if I was the one who wasn't ready? What if he was the right one at the wrong time? What if I just lost the only person who ever made me feel safe without needing to control them? These questions don't go away. You stay quiet, not out of spite, but out of strength, because you're not waiting anymore. You're evolving. Yeah. And that evolution is what makes her realize you didn't just disappear. You grew, and now she's the one stuck in a version of herself that hasn't moved. That's the wound pride can't protect her from. There comes a point when the pride starts to crack, not from something you said, but from the silence she can no longer ignore. You see, silence doesn't just create absence, it creates imagination. The mind fills in the blanks with stories, stories that grow louder with time. In her mind, she wonders what you're doing, but more than that, who you're becoming without her. She might scroll through your social feed looking for signs. Is he moving on? Is he seeing someone? Why does he look better now than when we were together? And that's what shakes her, because it's not just about missing you. It's about the version of you that she's no longer included in. The man who once texted her good morning is now putting that energy into himself. The man who once waited for her replies is now prioritizing his own peace. The man who gave her endless chances is now outgrowing the need to convince anyone of his worth. And let's be honest, this isn't what she expected. She thought leaving would leave a dent in you, that you'd slow down, pause your progress, sit in the shadows until she decided you were worthy again. But instead, you've done the opposite. You didn't hit pause, you hit evolve. And that triggers something deep in her, because now she's not comparing you to other men. She's comparing every other man to you. And the worst part for her is that they don't measure up, not in presence, not in intention, not in the way they made her feel when the world was loud and she needed someone still. You weren't just a man who showed up. You were the man who stood still when her world was spinning. And that's something no charm, money, or looks can replicate. But here's the twist. Now that she sees it, now that she feels it, it's too late to control it. Because what she thought was distance has become detachment. And detachment is when you no longer react to her energy, you no longer seek her validation, you no longer ask, "What did I do wrong?" You already answered that question, and you answered it by walking away with dignity intact. Now she's left on the other side, watching the very man she took for granted become the version of himself she always said she wanted. And here's the final blow. She knows she doesn't have access to that version anymore. That version of you doesn't beg. That version of you doesn't settle. That version of you doesn't return to places that didn't value him the first time. And the scariest part of all is that version of you is finally starting to realize he never needed her to become this man. He just needed the silence to wake him up. Now she's left in limbo, not because you said something cruel, but because you didn't say anything at all. And that kind of silence, it's not just confusing, it's revealing. It's revealing. She's beginning to realize something she never saw when she had your attention, that your presence wasn't just attention, it was intention. You didn't show up in her life out of convenience. You chose her, showed up for her, and stayed even when she was unsure, distant, or emotionally closed off. And now she's feeling the full weight of what it means when a man like that finally chooses himself. The calls she thought you'd eventually make, they never come. The "I miss you" text she expected weeks ago is still sitting in her imagination. And every day that passes without your energy chasing hers is another day where her confidence shrinks, not because you're trying to tear it down, but because she's finally seeing the truth. You gave her peace, and she gave you chaos. You offered emotional clarity, and she met it with emotional confusion. You gave honesty, and she returned it with games. You stood still when she pushed, hoping you'd fight harder to stay. But now that you've stepped away, she's starting to ask questions she once never dared to think. Why did I think pushing him away would prove my worth? Why did I need him to suffer before I felt powerful? Why does he look freer now without me? And here's what hits even deeper. She's realizing that her validation used to live in your pursuit. That every time you tried to fix things, every message you sent, every "let's talk" or "are you okay?" it made her feel wanted, important, irreplaceable. But now that it's gone, she doesn't just miss you. She misses how you made her feel about herself. Because that's what gets forgotten in breakups. People don't always miss the person, they miss the version of themselves they were when they were with you. With you. And right now, she doesn't like who she's becoming without your calm, without your grounding, without your energy reflecting back her softness, her complexity, her realness. She used to walk away to feel powerful. She stays silent, hoping you'll break first just to prove that you still care. But all she sees is you rising, more focused, more disciplined, more unbothered. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself more. That shift, that's what flips the dynamic. The man she used to control is no longer waiting. The man she used to test is no longer reacting. And the version of you she knew, that version no longer exists. You've leveled up in silence, not to make her feel regret, but because you are finally ready to become someone who no longer begs to be seen. Now, from a distance, she watches you exist without needing her to feel whole. That realization alone is the beginning of her unraveling. Quiet now, but not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. The kind that stings. She doesn't talk about it. She doesn't show it. But every time she lies in bed and reaches for her phone, only to find silence again. Your silence chips away at her pride. Because she knows the man who once gave her all the chances won't be giving another one. She can sense that the window she thought would always be open is finally closed. Not slammed shut in anger, but gently shut in peace. That's what haunts her. Not that you're gone, but that you're gone without needing revenge, without throwing insults, without begging for closure. You didn't need to win, you just needed your dignity back. And that's where she starts to spiral. Because now she's the one wondering, she's the one waiting, she's the one checking, she's the one hoping. The roles have reversed. Not because you played games, but because you stopped playing altogether. Oh, and that right there, that's when everything inside her begins to collapse. Because the story she told herself, he'll always want me, he's not strong enough to walk away, he'll chase, has now fallen apart. She realizes now that her power was never real. It was borrowed from your willingness to stay. And now you're gone, but not in pieces. You're gone in peace. And there's nothing more terrifying to someone who took you for granted than realizing you moved on without needing to prove anything. She thought detachment would come from rage, from chaos, from drama. But your detachment came in the form of self-respect, and self-respect leaves no trail to follow. She can't reach you anymore. Not because you blocked her, but because you've outgrown her. You don't belong in the version of her life that doesn't value you. And she finally knows it. She knows she's not just missing a man. She's missing a presence, a stability, a clarity. She's missing the version of herself that only came out when you were in the room. And now that you're not, she's not sure who she is anymore. That's the pain pride can't cover. That's the ache that pretending can't numb. And that's the reason she won't say it out loud, but deep down, she wishes more than anything that she'd never let you walk away. But you did, and in doing so, you became the lesson her ego wasn't ready to learn. She'll go through the motions. She'll keep herself busy. She'll pretend everything's under control. But every now and then she'll freeze. Mid-scroll, mid-laugh, mid-conversation, and feel that sharp pang of silence again. Because what you gave her wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was steady, real, unapologetically masculine in a world full of noise. And now she's surrounded by options yet starving for depth. She's being seen yet not truly felt. She's talking yet nothing reaches her heart the way your presence used to. And the worst part? You're not even trying. You're not even trying. You're not dropping hints. You're not checking in. You're not doing any of the things she expected you to do when you finally left. You're just living. And that's the most dangerous kind of peace, because it means you've accepted reality, embraced growth, and no longer need validation from someone who couldn't see your worth the first time around. That's what truly breaks her, not your absence, but your evolution. Affo. She thought you'd be waiting, but you turned that waiting into becoming. And the man you're becoming, now that man doesn't beg to be remembered, he chooses to be unforgettable. So if you're watching this and you've felt that silence from both sides, if you've walked away and still wondered if she'd ever truly feel it, trust this, she already does. She just can't say it. And even if she could, it wouldn't change who you've become. Now you're no longer looking back, you're building forward. And if that hits something real for you, don't just leave this behind. Hit that like button to show you're done begging. Comment below if you're finally walking in your worth, and subscribe so you never forget how powerful your silence truly is. Your next level doesn't begin when she returns.